everybody, I'm Tommy. You are on the Love Boat. What's happening? Good to see you. It's been a rough go, folks. The internet trouble. We've got get up in that basket. My mother has been struggling, so there's been some health issues. One second. Jane says, "Hey, Tommy, mods and family. Wasn't sure I was going to make it. Happy to see you and be here with all of you. Well, we're happy that you are here, and I mean that. Lilac Amy, how are you? Barbara Aldrich, good to have you here. Lilac Lime. I'm sorry. And I know that. Brock Bandy. Hey, Joe, what's happening? Johnny Scoville. That would be the Johnny Scoville. Surprised you didn't know that. The South American version thereof. So last time we talked, before I got snipped off of the internet because of my developing country, I was talking about things like taking back language a little bit. And I was talking about how they would really like us to be on the far left or the far right of every issue. And it gets to a point where you can't talk about things. And we're going to talk about things today. And if you disagree with me, please just tell me in an articulate way why you disagree with me. I have no problem with people who disagree. But what we're looking for is maybe a little bit of civil discourse. I tend to believe, in spite of some of the studies and some of the numbers that you hear, that realistically, we're probably looking at a much larger percentage of people that are unhappy with some of the stuff that's going on. And I think I can prove that here pretty easily. Let's fart around here for a second. I know it's early. I haven't said hello to everybody, but I want to kind of set the tone here. Anybody remember this person? Anyone? Bueller? So in 2023, the Anheuser-Busch company, the people that put out Bud Light, decided to make a change not just make a change, but make a change to the most successful beer selling in the United States at the time. And they decided to use a trans model to advertise a beer that, for the most part, has always been advertised by women in really skimpy outfits. Now, I'm not suggesting that that's a good or a bad thing, but it is absolutely a fact thing. And that's something that is probably worth talking about. The hard data on the Bud Light debacle was that Dylan Mulvaney promo goes live in April of 2023. The idea was that this person was celebrating 1 year of being a woman. This actually caught all kinds of crap from both sides of the aisle. They like to make this a conservative issue, but that's really not how this thing went down. The brand tanked, and after years now, the brand is still down 40%. And this was a beer that owned so much of the market share, it was terrifying. You talk about not messing with a good thing. I have a theory on this, and I want to run it by you guys. But the next one, which I find, the more common and the more modern example is currently what's happening at Cracker Barrel. Cracker Barrel stock has dropped about 14%. It's rebounding today, and it's rebounding because they pumped the brakes. But they were going to get rid of the symbol at Cracker Barrel. The one on the left of the screen, maybe on your right, I don't know how that works. But the one with the old man sitting next to the Cracker Barrel has been their advertisement since they opened. And they were doing what they said was going to be an $800 million rebrand. Ouch! $800 million to turn it into that Cracker Barrel that just has a name and there's no image of the old guy. Now, I'll be honest with you. I don't see what is particularly woke about the new sign, to be honest with you. But it's another phenomenon of a company that comes in and says, our audience sucks. There is a period of time in this country where the most important thing was how well you design something and how well you build something. Those days went away with the advent of really good marketing. And nowadays, the thought is that you should probably put more money into advertising than you put into product development or anything else. The branding and how you advertise something is far more important than the product. The crazy thing is Bud Light killed it. Like their brand was etched in stone. The guys that drank Bud Light probably had a poster of a woman in a bikini somewhere in their house. And you may find that foul, but it is your customer base, right? So the marketing for companies started to take over, and this really started to be fascinating. We saw companies like Apple, where Steve Jobs comes out in a turtleneck and addresses the entire world and says, I'm going to change the planet that you live on. And people got addicted to that product. There are Apple people that are live and die with Apple, right? They're super, super into it. The whole branding concept is a beautiful thing. However, to decide that human resources is now going to work with the people in the advertising part of the company. And that's really what happens, because the companies decide a couple of things. One, they decide that their audience needs to change. And I don't mean they want a whole group of new people. They want their audience to kowtow to what their political or their philosophical beliefs are. Now, the idea of crowning celebrating 1 year of a man becoming a woman, maybe 62% of the population finds that to be a good thing. I don't buy that. But there is a number from a study that actually says, and it comes from Global Marketing Studies, which have said 62% of people that they ask said, yes, I would like to see far more inclusive advertising. However, 40% of Bud Light is gone, right? 40% of the market cap is gone. They are absolutely decimated. And most analysts don't believe there's a chance in hell of this company coming back. That would lead me to believe that 62 out of 100 people didn't think that was a good idea, right? That doesn't make a lot of sense. I think what happens is we're in a new phenomenon where they have spent so much time trying to make people feel guilty for not being inclusive, or not being tolerant, or not being whatever the hell you want to call it, right? So when you ask somebody, would you like to see more inclusive advertising? They go, yeah. It's kind of like when a pollster calls you and says, who are you going to be voting for in the election? And you say, I'm going to be voting for Johnny Scoville. And they go, Johnny Scoville? It only takes about 3 of those calls before you start lying to the people who are doing the polling. Remember the whole Hillary Clinton thing? I mean, they thought up until the 12th hour that it was going to be no problem. It was going to be a landslide because everybody they did a study with. And there was an interesting study that went on at the time, a poll rather, where the pollster that called and said, hey, I have a question. Who are your neighbors going to vote for? And now a person could say, my neighbors are voting for that Johnny Scoville guy. And it gave them an opportunity to vote without saying, hey, I'm the neighbor. I'm the guy that's going to do this, right? In those polls, he was up by 40 points. See, we lie now because we have been made to feel bad because we suffer from white privilege, or we suffer from this privilege or that privilege. But you get to a point where all of a sudden, if you're not part of the new movement, then there's something wrong with us. Can you imagine if they tried to do that to Waffle House? That's a great comment. I wouldn't be surprised if they do. You know what I mean? Because here's the thing. This isn't being done by a bunch of people that do research and go, this is going to be a hell of an idea. This is done by a small group of people who go, what the hell's wrong with these troglodytes hanging pictures of girls in bikinis in their room? Well, I mean, Bud Light was kind of the frat brother beer. It was kind of every ballpark you went to, they sold Bud Light in the bottles that were made of metal. You understand what I'm saying? Those, what are those things called? I think they're aluminum, but it looks like a long neck bottle instead of a regular beer. And everywhere you went, it was ubiquitous. Bud Light was everywhere, right? It just was. Now it's not. And the backlash, Kid Rock blew a bunch of beer away with an automatic weapon. There were people that just really got into it. There was a lot of spoofs that were done for Dylan Mulvaney. The question that you have to come up with is, who's running the agenda? Now, don't get it messed up. There's a part of the government that does this new thing where you earn credits if you are really diverse, if you are inclusive, then you can get these credits that now people can look at you and say, well, you're a much better company. And you go, well, who cares about these credits? Well, if you want to do business internationally and you want to get loans and work with international bankers and things like that, then you end up not having a shot at that if your really woke score isn't high enough. I'm not making this up. You can research it. But once again, there's a small group of people that decide, you know what? You're not right. The fact that you like the symbol of the old man sitting at the barrel makes you a racist. Right? That's it. Makes you a racist. Right? The word cracker, you know what this means, right? It's a derogatory term for white folk because they were the people that cracked the whip during the times of slavery. And very often you hear it a lot in prison. It's not usually a nice term when it's thrown at somebody. And so you get one person who thinks that they're smarter than their entire audience and says, I'm going to change, this symbol. It's only going to cost us $800 million to rebrand it. There were parking lots being filmed that had no cars in them. And I'll tell you something, I've done a lot of eating at, which country has the social credit score? China? No, it's a global thing. It was, I believe the initiative was first put together by the United Nations. Archie's mom says, it's so bizarre to me. It's bizarre to me too. It really is. Michelob Light got the low carb drinkers and people that like the taste of water with a little bit of beer in it. I'm sorry. It's just not a lot of flavor in that beer. But anyway, the crux of this is that we're not allowed to have our own thoughts anymore. And they're ensuring that we don't have our own thoughts anymore because there's no dialogue. You can't say master bedroom and master bathroom anymore. They are destroying Dream of Jeannie as we speak. No. Dun, 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 dun. Do you know that I have a autographed photo of Jeannie in my, I think it's here actually. I don't know if I brought it with me, but years ago on the lifeboat, I had made a comment about Barbara Eaton in her early days, and somebody that had access to her got me an autographed picture of Jeannie doing this number with the head when she was younger, and then she had a picture of her holding it as an older woman, and she signed that as well. So it was, I'm a huge fan of Jeannie. Well, the other day I was talking about how Johnny and I were walking around the corner, and there's a guy here that sells bundles of sticks. Right? A bundle of sticks is called a faggot, right? For real, it is. And when I was growing up, that was not a term that you used in a derogatory fashion towards people who were on that alphabet list, the LGBTQ LMNOP. Had nothing to do with any of those people. Honest to God, like it was never a slur against somebody's sexual orientation. In fact, it almost always got used just between homeboys, going in to buy brew. You paying for this faggot? I mean, it was just something that, and when they said you can't say this stuff anymore, at the time you go, you know what? I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. And I'm the last thing in the world I want to do is hurt anybody's feelings. The last prison that I was at in the feds, because when you're getting shipped home in the federal system, they got to get you within 500 miles of where you live for the discharge process. So I got flown to Sheridan in Sheridan, Oregon. They call it Sheradice. Sheridan has weirdos on that yard. There are people with terrible paperwork on that yard. They allow freaks basically to walk the yard. And there were a lot of, and by freaks, I'm not talking about people who identify as another gender. I'm talking about people that look at kiddie porn and stuff online, those kind of freaks. But they also had a lot of people that were men trying to live as women and taking hormones for it and doing all of that. And if this person wanted to be called Karen or wanted to be called Linda, and they wanted to be referred to as she instead of he, I don't care. I'm not going to go over there. And a lot of convicts would get really angry and go, man, don't call that thing she. Who cares? Honestly, it doesn't bother me. But when you shove it down my throat, when you get to a point where it's at your door and they're saying, well, you're a troglodyte because, you don't agree with this, this, and this. I teach in schools with 50-ish Aboriginal, Torres Strait, and Palm Island kids. It has been fun and now love it, but a steep learning curve. I love that. I really do. Here's the thing. Dialogue, connection, and talking to people who are of different cultures and people who do not agree with you does wonderful things. If you think that Anheuser-Busch was way ahead of the curve and did a beautiful thing with the Dylan Mulvaney campaign, go ahead and tell me why and give me a decent argument. I mean, if your goal is to push the population to accept people, I think that's an admirable concept. It really is. However, it's never really worked very well. People over time, right? If something passes the smell test, I'm not being disrespectful, but over time, stupidity fails. That's why racism is going away, not getting stronger. No matter what anybody tells you, racism is going away. And it's going away because of things like this, where people can communicate with one another. But there was also a time where we could clown with one another. Most people who watch this channel for any length of time know that my mentor is a black dude. The guy that did more to help me get sober than anybody I've ever met is a black guy. And he said 4 or 5 of the funniest things that anyone has ever heard. And if I said any of them on here, I'd be canceled. because it was him taking shots at very stereotypical things about his own race. I'll give you an example because I don't think I can get canceled for this one. But one day we went outside and we were going to walk the yard because there were 3 units getting a shakedown done. So all those units had to be locked in the gym, big gym up there with a walking path and all that. So there were very few units that could be outside. When stuff like that happens, a white guy and a black guy can walk with each other and you're not going to catch a lot of crap. So we went outside to do that. And it was one of the first really hot days of spring. And I brought a half SPF and half tanning lotion kind of a thing. And I took my shirt off. I was putting it on. He said, give me some of that. And I said, what? He said, give me some of that. I said, it's tanning stuff. He goes, I know. I'm putting it on my palms. And it was him cracking a joke on himself. If he did that online, they'd cancel him. You can't even have fun. Stereotypes, believe it or not, bad, whatever you want to look at, have been a backbone of comedy forever. And there was a time where all of us could laugh at ourselves, right? I mean, you can drop convict jokes. I don't really lose it. You can drop junkie jokes. I don't really lose it. This is part of the identity, and I can get a laugh out of it. We're becoming a society that can't laugh. And I love the fact that Cracker Barrel pumped the brakes because I feel like this is a learning opportunity for the rest of the world. When Bud Light first came out with their deal, they dropped 16% in the stock in the first couple of days that it came out. It was almost instantly. With Cracker Barrel, the stock lost about 11% instantly and got up to about the same 14% number. The difference is they, instead of saying, hey, we're sticking by this, and they came out and said, hey, you know what? Our people have spoken. You don't want this changed. We thought maybe we were doing something that was going to push the company forward, but it was a mistake. And we listened to our customer base, and we're going to stay with the same signs. We're not making any change to how we are represented, how this company is going to be shown in the world. And their stock rebounded. And my prediction is the stock's going to go up because there are going to be so many people that try to jump on the train to prove a story, right? To push a narrative, to say, hey, you know what? If a company says something like, hey, we made a mistake, people may actually support that company. They might not, right? Depends on what the mistake is. I think what Cracker Barrel did and Bud Light did are almost identical. Honestly, you may not think so because of how much different the approaches were. But what they were doing was taking a name brand that belongs to the customers. The people that go to Cracker Barrel, I don't know if you spent a lot of time in Cracker Barrel, but the people that go to Cracker Barrel look like they're getting dressed to go to Cracker Barrel. It's a country kind of restaurant. And when I was in Bug Tussle, I went there a lot. I love Cracker Barrel. Watched Shallow Hal the other day. So good. Oh man, people would have a fit about some of that. You know what? I'm glad that you said this because we do this all the time. Johnny Scoville and myself do this all of the time where we say, you know what? Most of the movies that we grew up loving, you couldn't make today. Half of the Seinfeld jokes from the early 1990s, you couldn't make. If you disagree with anything I say and you come to me and say, here's why I disagree, you know what I want? I just want discourse. Don't come and tell me I'm homophobic, and don't come and tell me I'm racist or any of the other things that steal conversation. If you say to somebody, you're a racist, the conversation's over. For real, where do you go from there? It's the reason that they do this as their number one weapon. Where do you go from there? You got to say something along the lines of, I'm not prejudiced. I have friends who are, boy, that's a good one, isn't it? That always sounds good. They put you immediately back on your heels because what they don't want to do is discuss the issues. Because here's the issue, in my opinion, and you can tell me that I'm wrong. Hold on one second. You should cater to your target market and demographics. That is business. If they're trying to expand to a different market, then that's different. And I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. Or if you feel like maybe you're pigeonholed, right? Maybe you are Boston Market. Remember that company? Like they were killing it. And then they kind of went out of business pretty quickly, or they lost a lot of, they didn't grow properly. But let's say you find yourself stagnant and over the course of 5 or 6 years, your company's not going anywhere. Maybe it's time to make a change, right? Maybe it's time to do something that's going to bring in a younger demographic or a hipper demographic or whatever the hell you're aiming for. But to just go like this to your audience, when Bud Light, the difference between Bud Light, in my opinion, and Cracker Barrel is that Bud Light doubled down. After they made the comment, they came out and defended it and basically said, well, the audience needs to grow up. And if you're spending $25 or $26, what's a case of beer cost these days? Okay, I don't know anymore either, but I got to imagine it's over $20 for a case of beer, right? So let's say you're buying a $20 case of Bud Light and you're doing this 3 times a week, or you're doing this 5 times a month, or you're doing it every time you go to a ballpark. When they tell you that you're a cave dweller because you tend to like pictures of women in bikinis, or you're not tolerant because of the fact that you don't want to accept somebody as a spokesperson that you don't believe has been a woman long enough to be celebrated as the woman on the Bud Light advertisements. You're going to offend your own audience. And if your own audience is keeping you on top, they didn't need to make a change. Bud Light was killing it. I mean, absolutely killing it. All they had to do was sit back, put their feet on the desk, and cross them, right? Let it grow. It just was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. They were an actual percentage of the market share of all beer sold in the U.S. They were massive. Now they're not. And most people do not think that they're going to bounce back. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think so. I agree and don't have a problem with the sign or style. And I live in the deep South, right? It doesn't make sense to me that anybody could have a problem with it. The Cracker Barrel was just that. If you do a little research on this, and you look at Cracker Barrel, people used to sit around a barrel of crackers. Like, this was a thing. So the old man sitting there next to the thing of crackers, this is where people used to get together. There was no internet. So you would go down to the general store, sit around the Cracker Barrel, and find out what everybody in the entire town was doing. It's like a gossip mill. And I think it's a beautiful logo. There's nothing wrong with it. My daughter gave me grief for calling what they call a boombox a ghetto blaster. Says it's racist. There was no term boombox back in my day. Well, and here's the other thing. When did ghetto become a term? So you know what a ghetto is, right? Ghettos were places where the people who lived in that town were predominantly one nationality. So in New York, you had like places like Bensonhurst, or places like Red Hook, where everybody's Italian, right? Almost everybody there is Italian. That's an Italian ghetto. And they can be beautiful homes. They can be expensive homes. That's another term that people took and changed. And they do this constantly. And I'm telling you what, I'm done with it. I'm taking back words. I am a watch person. Most of you know this, right? I'm fairly into watches. And one of my favorite watches, I used to wear one on the show a lot, is the Rolex Day Date. It's sometimes called the President's model. It's not by Rolex, but by people. But it has the day on the top. It's got a date in the 3 o'clock window. It's usually made of either some precious metal. It's either 18 karat gold, white or yellow gold, or it's made of platinum. Sometimes rose gold, but it's kind of their flagship. It's kind of one of the more expensive of the Rolex models. And you don't need to mess with it. It has been selling the same way forever. It always will. But they did a woke version so that when you looked where the day was, it would say love or tolerance or something like that. And when you would look where the date window was, there would be a heart, or there would be a rainbow flag, or there would be any one of 31 different. I mean, not going to tell you what the date is, right? Unless you memorized what word was for Sunday or Monday or whatever, which to me would seem like a pretty, an annoying thing to have to do. Now, the funny thing is, I wanted to get some pictures of it so that I could show everybody tonight what this thing looked like. Couldn't find them. I'm not kidding. It's one of the strangest things in the world. It is they were all over the place for weeks. Right after the Rolex announced it was coming out with it last year, it is already a distant memory. And once again, you talk about a brand that doesn't need help. They make 2 million watches a year. And if you're a guy, you get on a waiting list to buy one. And depending on what model you want, you could be on that waiting list, 3 to 6 years. They need to mess with their brand. What you're going to do is anger a bunch of people that really buy your product because of a specific kind of branding. Polo clothing, Adidas clothing, companies like that. People buy that stuff because it becomes a part of who they are. And for some people that drink beer, that is a thing, right? They identify as a Bud Light drinker. Not anymore, man. They were having to throw out Bud Light because it was going past the expiration date with nobody buying it. They were giving rebates on Bud Light where if you bought it and you took the time to mail everything in or whatever, you were getting $10 back on a case, some outlandish amount of money, so that they were basically giving the case away, which probably not a great look for a company that owned the market, owned it. So the question becomes, is the world nuts? I got in minor trouble for having a small block vape in my pocket I locked it in room before class. But the teacher with obvious pouch of tobacco in his pocket, no problem. You know what? That's pretty, yeah, that hypocrite smokes 2 packs a day. It's, we spend a lot of time trying to enforce things. It's an addiction of sorts in the United States of America. And you don't really get an appreciation for just how ugly that is until you go to other places. You know, there are just bigger fish to fry. And we spend so much time, as you know, I don't watch television and I don't watch movies because of how they're shot. It makes it almost impossible for me to do so. So I do. Cindy G, good to see you. Glad you're here. I spend a lot of time watching things like true crime stuff. That's sort of where I end up going most of the time. And I talked about this on another show the other day. When a person gets pulled over now and a police officer gives them instructions, the person says no. I mean, so often that it's a genre. You can just watch that all day long if you want to. And it's, cop says, step out of the car. No, I'm not doing that. Roll your window down. No. Holds the ID up to the window. Everybody's pushing the limits of what their rights are. And I find it fascinating. I really do, because at the same time, they're taking away your rights at a rate that is astounding. We literally now have thought and word police. The reason that these human resource companies, these human resource officials and employees of companies like Cracker Barrel, like Anheuser-Busch, why these ultra woke people working in that industry, why they're trying to change the audience. And they've done a half-assed decent job. If 62% of the people that are talked to are lying and saying, yeah, I'll buy the Dylan Mulvaney stuff, or, I don't care if the company goes woke. Jaguar cars. Jaguar did an ad campaign that just showed, I don't know what, but it didn't show Jaguars. I'm talking about an entire ad campaign that did not show a car. This is a brand that needs that much help. I mean, Jag is just, it's Jag. And if you live in the United States and you say, well, people don't buy a lot of Jaguars, go to Great Britain, right? Go to Europe and see how many people are buying Jaguars. I mean, they are just, hey, Wharton Fissel, good to see you. It is a crazy kind of dedication to people who are into Jaguar. And it seems like more often than not, they go after companies that have massive brand loyalty. Bud Light, huge brand loyalty. Cracker Barrel, massive brand loyalty. They go after these companies because if they figure if there's a customer base that's that loyal to the product, then we can get them to be cool with a guy, who's transitioning into a woman, being the spokesperson for their beer and shooting commercials in a bathtub, talking about how, hey, 365 days ago, I became a woman. And I'm not really a beer drinker, but now I'm drinking Bud Light. What? I mean, honestly, whether you agree with the lifestyle, don't agree with the lifestyle, you slapped your customer base in the face. You know what, Cindy G? Don't worry about it at all. We're just glad you're here. Ashley says, we have Jaguars here. Well, we have them everywhere. But I mean, in some parts of the world, they are like a religion. So their entire ad campaign had androgynous looking people that, I don't know. Sometimes you'd think it was a man that might be trying to look like a woman, and sometimes it looked like a woman that might be trying to look like a man, and sometimes there was just really no telling. But they're not showing the product. And they got incredible backlash. The question becomes, why do you still do this if you watch it fail with so many other companies? And the answer is, they're going to change you, whether you want them to or not. And the campaigns are designed to do more than just influence you. It's also designed to divide us. Because if I come on and I say, I think that the woke agenda is absolutely ridiculous, and I have gay friends that think the woke agenda is absolutely ridiculous. This pushing things as far as you possibly can, in the name of inclusivity, what you're doing is you're alienating a massive part of the population so that a minute part of the population can be content. And I'm sorry, but in a lot of cases, that's exactly what's going on. You're talking about single digit parts of the population, right? If we want to give wild credit, let's say that 9% of people that are living their lives, as a different gender, but you can go into the locker room while, you're in there with your daughter, and you might see somebody that's packing heat in ways that they shouldn't in a locker room, right? This doesn't make any sense. The needs of the many really do need to outweigh the needs of the few. And if you really want to be cool, we'll build a bathroom. No, that's not giving me the respect I deserve. So the other option is what? Forcing people to stand next to a gender that they do not want to be naked in front of. And if not, you're a homophobe, or you're racist, or you're whatever. It doesn't make sense, says Ashley. You're absolutely right. It doesn't make any sense. Now, does that mean that I hate people that are living in the opposite gender? No, I had a child that did. The child decided that that's not how they wanted to live anymore, and has transitioned back, but not from any pressure from dad. I would love my kid no matter what happened. I would. But it was terrifying when my child decided to change and sat down and talked me through the whole process of how it was while she was becoming a he. And the amount of encouragement, I won't say pressure, but the amount of encouragement that she got to do that, it was almost, in my eyes, almost like a goth thing. It was almost like punk rock was in my day, where there was a small population of the school that was going to live any way that they wanted to. The difference is now we have the most advanced AI on planet Earth, designed in China, that makes that life look far more desirable than any other. And they do it on TikTok. It's a machine. Look at how they celebrate other things on there as well, like the number of channels dedicated to multi-personality disorder, which is not what they call it anymore, but it's exactly what it is, and I'll call it like that. Dissociative identity disorder, but multiple personality disorders. These are stars. These are TikTok stars, because they go on and say, I got 6 different personalities. Hold on, I'll change one while you watch. And then they become a 4-year-old kid and they talk to you. And I've done this on the show before, but they have channels where the people will say, well, I'm factive, meaning the people who are my alter egos are real people from the real world. Another person will say, I'm fictive. So one of my alters is Harry Potter. And there are schools in the US that will allow a kid to go down to the nurse because they transitioned into a 5-year-old and they can't possibly get through chemistry class if they're a 5-year-old. So they just send them down to the office. Now, as a parent, if my kid decided that he needed to leave algebra class because he thought he was supposed to be in Slytherin at that time, I want to know about it, right? You're not going to find a condescending attitude here, my friend. As far as, first of all, if you are suffering from any kind of illness that is mental, I don't look at it any different than if you have diverticulitis or an ulcer. And the world shouldn't either. But you see, it's one more way. Everything that they can do to separate us so that we do not connect. That's the desire. It scares the crap out of them that the truth of the matter is most people are in the middle. What they wanted to do with the Dylan Mulvaney story, what they're going to try to do with the Cracker Barrel story, is to say these are conservatives that are doing this, right? It's just, I promise you, if it was just conservatives, there still would have been people in the parking lot at Cracker Barrel. If it was just conservatives, Bud Light wouldn't be 40% down, right? Oh, I remember Trapped Musing. All right. Welcome back. Welcome back. I'm glad that you're here. Ashley says you can't do that on demand. She's making reference to switching from one personality to another. But here's the other thing. Most people who do suffer from dissociative identity disorder, the idea is to eventually bring everything back together so that the person can live a life with one personality. On TikTok, they celebrate that should never happen, that you're killing off beautiful parts of yourself. And they celebrate all of the weirdness of this. I watched one with my daughter and it was absolutely phenomenal because the person's talking, they got a voice like me. And the next one that pops up, this student, the next one is this high-pitched voice. And I'm Devin. I'm a social justice warrior, and I run the entire platoon, so to speak. These people don't have DID. What they have is a big following. And the sad thing is, we all hit a place in our lives where we felt like we needed to disconnect because we didn't look like the billboard, or we didn't look like the one kid in school that had already developed and was 3 years ahead of you. And everybody starts looking at their body and thinking, I'm not a woman. I'm not a man. I'm this thing that looks like something from ET. And this is a common thing that happens to everybody. It always has. But we didn't have an option to go, oh, God was wrong. I got this. Right? I'll be calling myself, Jane. It wasn't really a thing. Right? And the proof of the pudding in that is, look at how much the number of people who now identify as another gender, look how much it has increased. And people will say, well, no, it's just because of an awareness of the thing. No, it's not. I promise you it's not. It's because we expose kids at the age of 12 or 11 or 10 to tons of content where a whole comment section praising the hell out of the courage of this person for coming out and saying, I'm going to live as a different gender. And again, I didn't beat on my kid. Didn't tell him not to. And do I believe that there are people that absolutely suffer from body dysmorphia and think that they're the wrong gender? Yeah, I do. Can they, transition and live happy? I have no idea, man. So far above my pay grade. But anybody that is suffering with anything like that, my heart goes out to any of them. Ashley says there isn't anyone that could talk me into doing that. It's so difficult. No, but there are parents there have been court cases already of parents that started trying to transition kids at 3 because it's just cool as hell. And they'd like to be able to tell their neighbors that they got, hey, I'm one of a person that I was married to years ago for a while. We had a very long marriage, but I knew all her family and all of her relatives. And she had 2 siblings. Both of them have kids, and each of them have kids who are transitioning, right? In one family, 2 of them, and the other uncle, just 1. And my daughter, who was transitioning at the time. And you look at this and go, the odds that there are 4 people that are transitioning in this family, and then you look at what the statistics of people that actually do end up with, a gender dysmorphia kind of a thing, and the numbers don't add up. They don't match. And you know what? If it's one of those things like punk rock and you're going to do it for 4 years and then go, ooh, what the hell was I doing in high school? I wore acid wash. I had a mullet. But if you're taking drugs to chemically castrate yourself with the here you go from behind of counselors and teachers and people that think they're doing good things. You know that when they did frontal lobotomies, the person that came up with that got a Nobel Peace Prize, right? Guy's a hero. Scramble the brain of a violent person and they'll never be violent again. How about the person whose brain you scrambled? Well, they all got really large settlements. Ashley says you should really be sure that it's something that you want to do. And I agree with you. I think that, you got to have a cooling off period before you can get a weapon. I think people should have to go through a course of some kind so that they can really identify the reasons that they're wanting to make this decision. Because I'll tell you something, I didn't make a half-assed decent decision until I was in my 40s. For real. I didn't make very many good decisions. Fortunately, I never, needed to make one of this, kind of a size. One thing that I did not, I was comfortable in my skin to some degree. We need to love the skin we are in, not chop off the bits we don't like. like the medical industry needs to be held accountable. I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. We have found ourselves in a place where, well, this is just cool now. This is cool. And they're going to make it more acceptable. You know, there were television programs when I was incarcerated, and guys always wanted to watch, like, I can't remember what they call the specific genre, but kind of like Breaking Bad was, where you got like an hour show and it's on every single week or whatever. And at the time, there was like 3 different ones going at the same time, and all of them had a bunch of same-sex sex scenes. And the fellas don't take to it well. You know what I mean? In a dude's prison, it doesn't go over very well. And for the most part, the stuff got turned off. And here was a group of guys that were watching this crap religiously. And those scenes were enough to make them now. Does that make those people intolerant? Probably. Does it make them homophobic? It might. But I think that anything that you push onto other people, you know what they do? They push back. Ashley says if you truly need it, then it should be accepted. I don't disagree with that. I don't. But it's fascinating, like people in who are incarcerated. If you saw the numbers of people who get incarcerated and decide that they are going to become a woman, it's absolutely incredible. And at least in the federal system, I had a cop say to me that he had only seen 4 people ever that didn't have a messed up case. So to me, it always seemed like those people would go in and say, I want to become a woman, because they're not going to get beat up if they're living as a woman. They're going to end up putting them in a prison where if somebody does beat them up, it's a hate crime. It's not just like beating up another inmate. It's a hate crime. And it was a way of people who were doing a lot of time for really foul crimes to fly under the radar, so to speak. I think it's a dangerous and a slippery slope. You know, if this is something that means the world to you and you absolutely feel as if you were born in the wrong body, well, then at the age of 18, you should start talking to a doctor, going to a psychiatrist, working through a process where people who can say, this isn't somebody wasted on dope making a really bad decision, right? To be honest, I would rather be in a woman's prison, and that might be the reason. Yeah, Ashley, I get that. Here's the thing, though. Unless you snip it off, right? Unless the plumbing is gone, the feds aren't letting you go to a woman's prison. So they may develop breasts and start doing that, but the process of actually having their junk removed and formed into the opposite body parts, that's, you got to go the full Monty in reverse, so to speak. See what I did there?
I did.
You got to get your junk snipped off if you're going to go into a woman's prison. Yeah, you know, and I say that now, but I say it kind of off the top of my head. Hey, Caroline in Canada. But this is one of those situations where I would say quickly, yeah, I'd much rather be in a woman's prison. I'm not sure I would actually. I think that might be a really toxic environment as well. I don't know. I met a person suffered with schizophrenia with 7 personalities. I met them all. She endured a terrible trauma that in order to survive, her mind split to become 7 personalities. And that is normally what is considered to cause dissociative identity disorder. It's a way that the brain has, this is the theory, it's a way that the brain has of protecting people from stuff that is so unbelievably horrifying that they can't survive it as one personality. Think of it as just your brain protecting you, making sure that there'll be one personality that they just make ultra tough that can handle all of this, right? It's terrifying to me that there's abuse that's so bad that it can literally split a person into different categories of human so that they can get through it. That's horrible, right? It's horrible. But what's worse is there are people online celebrating this like it's the coolest thing in the world. Like you just joined the Mouseketeers or some shit. Like it just has become a club. And my daughter was the one that turned me on to it. She's like, you've got to see some of this stuff. And it's horrifying. It's horrifying. And it's not an accident. The algorithm is pushing that kind of content on our society, on the US kids. It sure as hell doesn't do that in China. In China, ByteDance has an educational program. TikTok over there is about teaching kids math and science. In the US, it's celebrating everything that you hope doesn't happen with your child. I'm sorry, but it's the truth. The women's sports is what gets me. Yeah, that I find absolutely horrific. And what I find even more unbelievable are the people that just go, no, you got to let those people compete. It really makes you wonder about the brain pan. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I've used this example before. Chris Everett was at one time the #1 women's tennis player in the world. Very, very talented. And she had a lifelong battle with a woman named Martina Navratilova, who ended up sort of dethroning her. And one was very sort of feminine and blonde and sort of all-American kind of girl. And the other one looked a little bit like Schwarzenegger. I'm being disrespectful, but she was definitely more yoked up. And she had said that she would like to play on the men's tour and felt like she could compete with the guys. And when they asked Chris Everett, she said, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. She said, I have a brother who's 125th in the world on the men's ladder. She said, and when I play him, he beats me in straight sets. Like just kicks the crap out of him. And it's not that they're a better athlete. It's that they're built different, just completely different. You know what I mean? The way the muscles are, the way that snap, like reflex muscles, what do they call it? Fast reflex muscles. It's just different. You know what I mean? Like body mass, how guys are built are different than how women are built. But what's sad is you have people that train their entire lives for one shot. And then you get there and find out that a dude that's 6'3" has decided to transition into being a woman. He was not ranked as a guy. And now he's going to crush every single record in the US as a mediocre male swimmer. But as a female swimmer, he's just the business. He also liked to parade around the locker room with his junk hanging out, made a lot of people really, really uncomfortable. And those people who came out and said, that makes me uncomfortable, are homophobic, xenophobic, racist, and just bad people. Wow. What with the hating and the blaming and the divide and conquer. You don't validate a disorder. Good psychology. Well, maybe don't celebrate. Here's the other thing. They don't want dissociative identity disorder to be called anything like that. This isn't a disorder. Even if it's dissociative identity disorder, they don't want to be considered that. They want to be considered special, and that every one of those, those independent personalities have a right to live a happy existence. They don't want to bring them all together. That would be killing off all of their factive and fictive alters, right? Now, here's the thing. People that really have it absolutely want their life back. They black out periods of time because as one personality takes over, the other one, they check out. So if that personality is there for 6 hours, when the next one comes in, they got no money in their pocket. They're drunk. They don't know how it happened. It's a terrifying existence. But now it's a lifestyle choice. And the numbers don't add up. The number of people who are claiming dissociative identity disorder, the number of people who are claiming a lot of stuff, and I'm not trying to sound like an ass, and I know I'm going to make a lot of people that, unhappy, but look up the number of people online who had channels about autism, where these people had channels talking about what it is to be autistic. And then we find out that they're not autistic, that these are people. When they blurt out. Tourette's. There was a woman that just recently got caught milking a audience for years, claiming to have Tourette's. And she would burst out in curses and had stims and certain, affectations or whatever. And she's there faking this for popularity. And I know that for a lot of people, this has got to be hard. If I want to know what it's like being another, I'll read a biography. Well played, Morton. Studies going back to the 1970s say that actually going through puberty resolves most cases of gender dysphoria. Barbara, I have read that. In fact, I think it might be in my notes. And the sad part is that we're allowing treatment now for people who are prepubescent, right? There are treatments taking place with some kids as young as 9 years of age. And I'm sorry, but 9 years? 9 years, man. I don't think I had a lot going on in the brain pan at 9 years.
Well, I can tell you didn't.
Yeah. Johnny says, I know you didn't. I could tell you. Yes, I don't think sexual abuse is talked about enough. Society doesn't want to know about sexual abuse. They pretend it doesn't happen. Well, a lot of the society is involved in it. Right? Sorry, but that's the truth. And we don't have royalty in the United States. We have Hollywood. We treat, famous people as if they're royalty. And, the more that time goes on, the more we find out about the Harvey Weinsteins of the world and the casting couches and the P. Diddy's of the world. And all of these people that sort of get caught with their pants down, literally and figuratively speaking. And people who are in positions of power that force other people who want to be successful into abuse in order to be successful. That's horrifying. Horrifying. And there's a lot that we just don't even talk about. Steven Seagal's got a great reputation. Surprised you didn't know that. Was the story about the woman named Sybil that Sally Field played proven to be untrue? That's a great question, Caroline. I read the book. I didn't see the movie. I read the book in 6th grade. I had a teacher that was talking about Sybil and the case. I read that when I was in 6th grade. Hold on one second. Did I miss something? I feel like I missed something. Any chance? We are, if somebody, it was a hoax. Wow, that's horrible. That's horrible. It was a very difficult book to read. The abuse that she talked about at the hands of her family and what caused her to, allegedly within the book anyway. 3 Faces of Eve. I read that one as well. Sybil was a real patient, but her symptoms were greatly exaggerated in the book. Well, that happens a lot. You know what I mean? That happens a lot. And it doesn't do anybody any justice. And what the proof of the pudding is? There was a television show. Somebody help me. You guys are smart. There was a show that was based on a woman who had dissociative identity disorder. Prior to that show, there weren't any kids doing this on TikTok. There just weren't. None. But after this show, which was highly successful, the number of people that started to make channels about it and to start to claim that they had this has gone through the roof. Alrighty, Wharton, your Chihuahuas / pit bulls. There's a combo. There is a combo. Yeah, unfortunately, it's very easy to sway a society. That's sad but true. If you show 5th graders Breaking Bad, there's a bunch of them that are going to end up. Thank you, Wharton. There'll be a bunch of 5th graders who start to look at Walter White as a bit of a hero. And I'm not one of those guys that says, yeah, it's video games causing people to kill. I mean, that's not the point that I'm getting at, right? But it's real. Do you remember? Well, we can't use his whole name because he's alive. Do you remember Terry?
Sure.
My high school.
Oh, yeah.
Mom was a teacher.
Yep.
This dude became Don Johnson from Miami Vice. I'm not joking. He wore linen suits to school every single day. Wore a big fake gold Rolex, and just he wanted so badly to be that character. And there are so many cases of kids that took a character from a movie and mimicked it and lived that person's existence right up until the time that they killed somebody. We are talking about people who are super impressionable, right? If you could watch something and then decide that you're the guy from American Psycho, how much easier is it if you're just online and there are people encouraging you? Do you feel like you don't really look like the gender you were born in? Do you feel like you're not developing? Yeah, everyone does. I'm not sure, but there's a lady. There was a lady whose first name I think is Trudy, and she wrote a book called, I think, When the Rabbit Cries. Heartbreaking story. I know that book. I do know that book. They all want to be vampires when Twilight came out. Fact. Yeah, absolute fact. Daniel, what a cool way to pull it. Daniel says your ear gate and eye gate is important, right? Are you taking the time to guard your gates? I like that. I really do. I absolutely love that. Johnny was talking about being bold on his show. You don't have to take that in the way that Johnny is taking it. I think it's a beautiful. I knew exactly what you meant, Barbara Wade. But be bold. You're not going to have connection with somebody if you take 60% of the conversations off the table. The other day, I was talking about this in the morning where I said, most of us park in the middle. We're not mostly wildly left or wildly right, but that's what they're trying to do. They just keep pushing us farther to each side, because if you can fracture the country in half, they're a hell of a lot easier to control. If they come together as one, they're going to demand things like rights. They're going to demand things like equality. They're going to demand things like kindness. Primal Fear with Ed Norton is amazing acting about personalities. Yes, it is. Hold on one second. I actually stumbled on a channel about people detransitioning and has heaps of teenagers or young 20s, and that's great stuff, right? If it makes them happy. What's really tough is when these people have gone too far and can't come back. And the number of stories from people who have been down that road, we'll demonetize it if we haven't up to this point, but the suicide rate among people in that demographic is about on par with people in concentration camps. I'm not being funny. That's an actual thing. It's frightening. It really is. It's frightening. And we're not, I think, and time may prove me to be an idiot, but I think this is going to be like the eugenics movement. I think it's going to be like the frontal lobotomy, where people in academia and scientists and everybody else said, wow, this is great, and then had to go back a decade later and go, what the hell were we thinking? I really believe that the day is coming where we're going to look and say, doctors did what? Doctors cut the junk off of young boys, or they removed breasts from women that weren't 21, because it's just incredible. The shooter in Minneapolis wrote about that in his manifesto, that he wished he never gone down that path. Yeah. And apparently his daddy was a member of the Central Intelligence Agency. Allegedly. That's what they're saying. It doesn't make, I don't know. I was out at the rehab center. For those that don't know, my brother and I volunteer. We're fortunate enough that they let us in to go over and hang out with these young men who are getting sober, and it's a beautiful place to be. And the guy that runs its name is David. And if you go up to him at any given time and say, how much money do you have in your pocket? He'll say $5, because anything that comes in goes to those guys. The amount of money that it takes to keep somebody there for a month, and nobody pays. He's taking those guys in, and it's just donations. It's all of these things that are just fortunate, right? There are people that are taking care of it. But he showed us his journal when we first got there, and in his journal was a hand-drawn sketch of the rehab. And this is decades ago. But this dude had a vision for what he was going to build and has busted his hump to make it happen. And no one will ever hear about him. But some asshat that wants to break into a church and start shooting at people, we're going to get to read their manifesto. I'm here to tell you that there are a lot more Davids on planet Earth than there are those asses that are breaking into places and shooting them up. But I hate to sound like another naysayer or whatever, or just to be negative Tommy here. But you know what? There's been a lot of people who were shooters that were transitioning. Another Catholic school got shot up by a person that was transitioning last year. You remember that, Johnny Scoville? What could possibly go wrong if we just start pumping them with as much hormones as we can from the opposite gender? What could go wrong? Years ago, there was a young kid about 16 years old. He was transitioning from Lauren to Zach. We lost him. I'm sorry to hear that, man. I really am. I'm sorry to hear that. This is such a painful thing. And when my child wanted to live as the opposite gender, I'm not going to lie to anybody. I felt like I got hit in the stomach with a baseball bat. But I didn't say a word ever negative. I never said, you're not this, or I didn't do that at all. And I had faith that given time, this was going to be something that she was a very intelligent kid. And I just had a feeling that over time that was going to become something that got fixed, and I am fortunate that it did, I really am. But the number of people who she was friends with because of that whole process, she had a very large friend group. There was, in the school she was in, there was probably 80 kids in there that were transitioning, which if you do the math is probably like 16 times what the normal average used to be in a school, maybe more than that. It was insane how many kids were. And the funny thing is, when she decided that she was going to transition back, she was instantly hated. Caught a lot of crap. If this wasn't a clique, if this wasn't a thing, people would have said, well, fantastic. I'm glad that you're starting to just be comfortable, because you would want that person to be comfortable, whether they were in the gender they were born with or another gender or whatever. I was in prison, and there was a National Geographic magazine that came out, and Q brought it to my cell and said, you got to read this. I said, what is it? He said, it's on gender. And I said, fantastic. He goes, how many genders are there? I said, to the best of my knowledge, 2. Now, if you want to be really woke, you can say, well, here's the deal. Okay, there's more than 2. You got a man born as a man, a man born as a woman, right? If somebody wants to transition, that would be a 3rd. If somebody wants to transition to the opposite gender, that would be a 4th, right? They came up with 32. I'm going to tell you something. I don't think I'm stupid. In fact, I think sometimes I can be a pretty deep thinker.
There are currently 72 accepted genders.
I'm sorry, according to Johnny Scoville, and he's only wrong about hot sauce these days. How many?
72.
There are 72 approved genders. Again, I consider myself a fairly deep thinker, and I would be hard pressed to figure out how they could come up with 15. Right? I mean, okay, so cis is a gender? No, it's not. Why is that a gender? That should just be, right, normal. Sorry. But if you're born as a guy and you're happy that you're born as a guy, all right. But I'm not joking. When I read, and I've talked about this before, it's going to sound like I'm misquoting this. I promise you I'm not. One of the genders that they described in that article was a guy who was born male, but deep down in his heart, he knows that he's female. But that female wants to transition into being a male. What? What the deuce is that? That's somebody that really wants to join that club, but doesn't want to have to do any of the heavy lifting. They don't want to have to get their hair cut or strap anything down. So they're going to be a dude that is born male, but deep down in that man's heart, he knows that he's a woman. But deep down in that woman's heart, she wants to transition into a man. Ashley says, I always hear sexuality is a spectrum. I wasn't on the spectrum. You know what? I mean, look, let's say that there are people, I don't care about sexual identity. I don't care who you want to sleep with. If they're, willing and they're into it and they're of a legal age and that's your get down, who cares? I honestly don't think Uncle Sam or any other government should spend any time in your bedroom unless what you're doing in there is against the law. But I'll tell you something. When they start using acronyms like minor attracted person, have you ever heard this? MAP. It's a minor attracted person. They used to call those pedophiles, right? Chomos, freaks. Now they're minor attracted people. And the reason they're doing that is it's softening it. It gets back to Carlin and the number of syllables that you use. It takes the sting out of it. When you start giving it names that, well, it doesn't make it sound all that bad, right? That's not a choice. They're born that way, right? They're just born that way. I would like to get to a point on this channel where we're going to talk about all kinds of things that you don't have to agree with me on any of them, right? You don't have to agree with me on any of them. But if you don't tell me to F off and walk away. Tell me why you disagree with me. And I'll give you all kinds of time to do it in an articulate fashion. Gotta go. To use a non-woke term, I can hear two Gen Z nurses doing handover and they will lecture me because I haven't eaten lunch and room is a mess. It's their job, but I hate being lectured by them. I understand. It's a pleasure to have you here. I hope to see you back. I think my gender is elderly, but I want to transition to young. Sully Orange, I like where this is going. When I was still doing a show with my ex, I said that I was identifying, I wanted my pronouns to be handsome and genius. You could use either of those. And the funny thing is, you know, here's the thing, you know, those neo pronouns where people, that started as a joke. Honest to God, it started as a joke. There was a conservative show that said it's just a matter of time before they're saying things like z, zay, them, and, you know, like a neo pronoun, and boom, caught on like that. I draw the line there. If you are living as a woman and you were born as a man and you want me to call you she, I don't care. What's that got to do with me? But you want me to call you zit, zat, zis, it's not happening. You're not messing with my language, right? And I'm going to start calling Johnny Scoville a faggot again because I'm not aiming that at anybody because of their anything, not their gender, not their sexuality, not any of it. But I'm tired of having my language hijacked. You may have noticed we no longer say SA, right? I'm not trivializing things like rape by calling it rape. Yeah, and Johnny laughs every time. I'm not going to trivialize things like rape by calling it grape or watering down any of these things. So less people will see the videos. I don't care. I really don't. Because it's just like what's going on where you've got this group of people that say, well, yeah, I would rather see woke advertising. 62%. Do me a favor. If you would rather see more inclusive, more woke advertising, you can put a 3 in the chat. If you'd rather go the other way, right, and see less of that, then put a 2 in the chat. So if you think Bud Light screwed up, give me a 2. If you think Bud Light should have kept Dylan Mulvaney, give me a 3. And here's the thing. If you feel like you should say 2 to make me happy, I'm really sorry. Don't. I don't have a problem with people of differing opinions. I promise you I don't. Do I think the pendulum will swing back from the insanity the world is going through? And when will it happen? Here's the thing. Yeah, it will. But my fear is that what's going to happen is we're going to get an ultra pissed off group of people who are going to attack the wokeness. And this kind of crap causes violence. This kind of, when you get 3% of the population to dictate to 97% of the population, and I'm making that number up, let's say 10% of the population, if we dictate and change how we go to the bathroom, where we go to locker rooms, how we compete in sports, all of these things for 10% of the population, eventually the 90% is going to get so angry at the 10% that we're going to have problems. And I don't want problems. That you can say, right? You can say, I'm completely cool with people who living their life in any single way that they want to, and still say, but I don't think a girl who trains, in women's softball her entire life should have to face a 210-pound male pitcher, born male, who now identifies as a woman. I'm sorry, But Tommy, it's not fair to them. Well, you know what? Here's the thing. I would love to play in the NBA. I really would. I would love to play NBA basketball. Problem is, I can't. I'm not any good at it. I can't throw the ball through the hoop. The dribbling thing has always been a bit of a stretch for me. Johnny was good at it. I am not worth a fart at playing basketball. Should they change everything up so I can? Right? It's hurting my feelings. I'm triggered as hell by the fact that I'm not allowed to do any of these things. I'm sorry. That's how I feel. I'm triggered. How about if I identify as Quagmire? Right? Giggity. And then I just want to go into locker rooms for that reason. Once you start talking about identifying as, there are people that I don't care who gets married. If two dudes want to marry each other or two women want to marry each other, why would that mean anything to me? The problem becomes, once you say that's fine, how do you say to a person who says, I want to marry 3 people? You said his love is okay. You said her love is okay. You said their love is okay. Why is my love not okay? I live in a polyamorous relationship with 3 other women. Why can't I marry the 3 of them? And you go, yeah, why can't they? What difference does it make? Well, it kind of makes a difference if, let's say that person was in the military and now there's a pension. What do? They split that pension up 3 ways. Knowing the United States government, they would pay it 3 times. Right? For real. That's probably what would happen. Don't say that in Utah. No, but you see where I'm going with this? There are people in the United States who are already legally trying to marry AI, trying to make that legit, to marry artificial intelligence. You talk about a slippery slope. There's a guy that wants to marry a horse. Right? Is the horse into it? Has anyone?
Have you seen that horse?
Is it a pretty good looking horse?
It's a pretty handsome horse.
Johnny Scoville says, if you haven't seen the horse, you might not want to judge them. Wokies are just, like a rebranded Bolshevik commie. You know what? There's, and I'll be honest with you, I love that kind of language. I'm sorry, I do. And you can say it to me too. I don't care. We need to grow some thicker skin and be a little bit more bold. The other day, I talked about a content creator that did a show on their faith. It was Reese. Relatable Reese did a show about her changing faith. And I'll be honest with you, I thought it was absolutely beautiful. And I thought it was absolutely courageous. And I would have said that the other day when I brought it up. And right as I was about to, I thought, I probably shouldn't do that without mentioning to her that I might, and getting a kind of permission. I don't really spend a lot of time talking about other content creators. As a rule of thumb, it's not really something that I do often. But it was an amazing video, and this is a platform where sharing what you feel, especially if it's one of the hot button subjects, can be absolute suicide. Right? As a channel, for real. I lived in Sweden for 2 years in 1994. I met a woman named Lisa who was adopted from Bangladesh. Years later, she found me on Facebook and she said that she is now called Leo. Yeah. And you know what? I hope Leo's living a great life. I hope Leo is happy. I really do. I hope that worked out. But I hope that Leo did it for all of the right reasons, because there was a period of time where wearing a members only jacket was really a big thing. Like there were parents paying $2,000 when you could buy a car for $2,000, because without that, the kid just couldn't be cool. You had one. Johnny Scoville had one. But members only, you had 2. Members only was just that. There have been times in my life where to be part of the clique, you had to have the right glasses, or you had to have the right pair of shoes. You had to wear a leather coat. There were all of these different things that I feel like with the advent of this, shoving down people's throats, whatever they want to, you find that these kids are making decisions based on garbage in and garbage out. Right? Garbage in, garbage out. She transitioned to a man. Well, I hope that he's happy. I really do. Yeah, back in my day, 29 years old, we had tomboys. Now it's only trans. Well, and you know what? It's it's just not something that's easy to come back from. You know what I mean? It's not easy to come back from surgery to change who you are. And I watched my daughter go back into a school and say, I'm not living, I'm transitioning back, or detransitioning, or whatever they want to call it, back into to being a young lady. And it took a rowdy amount of courage, because she got beat on for it. Like, she was really, really treated badly by the community that she was a part of for so long. Apparently, they don't like people that detransition. We have a minimum age requirements for certain things like driving, getting a tattoo, holding a job for a reason. Damn straight, right? This is actually a fantastic point. We don't even let kids get a learner's permit to get behind the wheel of a car with mom and dad in the car with them, or with an instructor in the car with them, until they're 15. In most states, you can't consume alcoholic beverages until you're 21, but you can make a choice to cut your junk off before you're 18. Seems like a really odd thing to me. It really does. Because she made them doubt their own choice. You know what, Barbara Waite? Would you believe that Dad said the same thing to her the day that she came, the first day she came back from school? She said, Dad, they were so bad to me. And I said, because you're holding up a mirror and you're making every one of them go, am I doing the wrong thing? Did I screw up? And guess what? Before she was done, and I think she had 6 months left or 5 months left of her senior year when she detransitioned. And by the time she had left school, 3 other people that she knew had also detransitioned. And I still wonder, if the first person doesn't come forward, do they all just ride it out? Right? It's an instant club. The second you go, well, I'm living as a different person, now you're part of a group, and you're instantly part of a tribe that accepts you for exactly what you are, right? Providing that they agree with exactly what you are. It's and look, this is a tough subject, but I promise you, from this point on, I am Tommy Scoville, the anti-social justice warrior. It has to happen. We have to be able to start having conversations. We have to be able to start conversing about things that are uncomfortable and finding out what the other person thinks. Maybe the troglodyte, cave-dwelling, living in the cave, and the person that I am, maybe, someone is going to enlighten me with their articulate explanation of a subject that I don't agree with. That's the greatest stuff in the world. It really is. This connection thing is supposed to be more than just, hey, how are you? It's the ability to talk about the deepest and the heaviest things. And if you take all those off the table, then what we're doing here is grab ass. There's nothing about this that's going to rise to the level of connection. There's nothing about anything that we're doing that's going to rise to the level that changes somebody's life. It's not. Connection happens at a level where you're talking about the things that aren't easy to agree on. It's accepting people in spite of the fact that they don't support your echo chamber. We got to a point in this country where, when I was growing up, everybody watched Walter Cronkite. Everybody. Guys from the left, guys from the right, guys from the middle, women from all sides. Everybody watched Walter Cronkite, right? And that's the way it was. When that was done, right? When that was done, we sort of switched up. And now you only watch news that tells you exactly what you want to hear. And I don't mean you, I mean as a society. You can even start paring it down even further. Well, I really like this particular brand of liberalism, but they got to be a little bit more liberal. Or I really like this brand of conservative, but they got to bring more God into it, because they're getting the channels to narrow it down so tightly that nobody listens to anybody except exactly the people that agree with them 100%. I wonder if Leah Thomas is for real, since there's been no surgery. Leah Thomas was a swimmer that couldn't make it as a man, who decided to become a woman swimmer and then kicked the hell out of the competition. As far as I'm concerned, Yeah, I'm not a fan. And particularly because of the stories that came out of the locker room. But I think of my daughter and I think, can you imagine if your daughter spent their entire life training for this, for that moment? I was a skier and I was very, very into it. And you train for a long time. And when the time comes for the competition, you got literally about 30 seconds and your run is over. And you train, if you make it to the Olympics, you're training your entire life for 2 or 3 30-second runs. And that's kind of a staggering thing if right around the time you're getting there and you've dedicated your entire life to this, and they go, by the way, that's Rocco. And Rocco just became a lady. Or the weightlifting ones. A guy trying to prove a point showed up to enter a women's weightlifting competition with a full beard and said, I identify as a woman. Bench pressed, 600 pounds or something outlandish like that? Only beat the competition by, a factor of 3. I mean, a lot of this to me is just complete and utter BS. And I'm sorry. I was a leftist until 2012. Then I saw the writing on the wall. The left have gone so far left that it has made moderates now right wing. Here's the thing. What if socially you are a sort of left wing socially, but you believe that fiscally, you think more conservative like. You think that, you can't tax your way to prosperity. Or maybe you think you start looking at 2 different angles. What if you want one from column A and one from column B? Well, that can happen if you have a conversation, but they're not going to let us have the conversation. They're going to do everything they can to keep people from trying to enlighten one another, right? Let people understand what the opposite opinion is. That doesn't happen anymore. What we hear of the opposite opinion is the fair and balanced version, and they bring somebody on and the 2 sides talk, and depending on which channel you're on, they're going to let that host get the last word. And usually they have the other person on to make them look stupid. Or even worse, they'll say, liberal, so-and-so, and they bring on someone that's not liberal. They bring on someone that, or they, what do they call them? Rhinos. They bring on a Republican in name only. And it's just to sell cars. It's not to deliver you the news. If you think that I'm already not popular in here, that's absolute feces. You're incredibly popular in here, Jane Aldrich. You are universally loved. Knock that off. I'm already not popular here, but yes, we can have those conversations. It requires listening and discussion, not jumping in with assumptions or attitudes. I didn't think that's what we do here. I would like to give people the opportunity to have conversations and to do so in a way that is healthy. But there's a lot of subjects that have been off the table forever. I never would have done a show on Dylan Mulvaney. I wouldn't have. But there's a lot of shows that I'm doing that I never would have done. I'm going to do one either tomorrow or the next day that you just ain't going to believe. But I don't care anymore. What do you think of that? You know why? Because it's not moving the ball forward at all. It's not moving the ball forward. In fact, it's having the exact opposite effect. Kelly says, well said, Jane. For your information, you are cherished by many here. A lot of that going around. His winky is fully intact. Yeah, that's what the women in the locker room said when he was in there doing his showering thing. All right, people. Please come back tomorrow, because if it's not tomorrow, it'll be the next day. But I got a couple of really heavy subjects that are going to be coming down the road. Might even drag that the brother of mine to do one of these with me.
I don't think so.
Don't be a faggot. All right, people. Between now and the next time I see a squirrel is actually in the cupboard as we speak. She's got this thing about her sister. They're an awful lot of fun, right? Together. But Squirrel is the older sister, and when it gets to a point where Katy Perry is bothering her, she just gives her the 1-2 punch really quick. She's actually not nearly as tolerant to Kitty as she used to be. I mean, they play all day, but once it gets to a point, she gives her the slap. And then Katie wants to chase her around more, and she goes and hides. So I know that right now that is where she is at. She is hiding. People, thank you for putting up with me. And I want everybody to come together and tell me your opinions. There are going to be some shows coming up that are going to be tougher. I'll tell you what. I'll tell you right now. There's a show coming up that you're all going to get to give me a lot of opinions, and some of them are going to hurt me. I guarantee it. But we're going to talk about subjects that we don't normally talk about, because the connection on this channel is going to grow. It's not going to go in the opposite direction of that. You have my word. You have my word. All right, people, between now and the next time I see you, which hopefully is tomorrow morning, if we still have cable, if we still have internet, believe it or not, I am trying to do 2 shows a day, but it has been this has been a tough week or two between my mom and her problems and the internet. But please do me a favor and say a prayer for Moscowville. She could use it. And we will see all of you, hopefully, on the Love Boat tomorrow. Between now and the next time I see you, put a little love in your heart. Thank you. Have a great night.